Da Five Bloods is the latest joint to be released by Spike Lee. It is coming straight to Netflix, so it's not something where we have to worry about rescheduling through theaters because of the coronavirus. It's just perfectly suitable for Netflix. And this movie is about 4 African-American Vietnam vets, Paul, Otis, Melvin, and Eddie, who come back to Vietnam not only to find the remains of their former Captain-in-Chief, Stormin' Norman, played by Chadwick Boseman, but they're also there to find a buried treasure that they have left behind for so long, and now they've reunited finally to come back and get it. When it comes to streaming services and the movies they make and the people that get attached to them, it's not something to be completely worried about anymore, like, oh, it's probably going to be bad because it's coming straight to streaming. I feel like I've talked about this before, but that's not a thing anymore. There's so many streaming services that have a lot of original content that not every one of them is going to be bad. You even have legendary filmmakers like Martin Scorsese or Noah Baumbach making movies for Netflix. So I was not worried in the slightest when Spike Lee's next film, this one, was announced to come straight to Netflix. If anything, I was like, all right, that's really cool of him to get that Netflix money. A lot of his movies are on Netflix right now too. You have She's Gotta Have It, Get on the Bus, Inside Man, and Malcolm X. They're on Netflix right now in case you want to explore his filmography. Because my first Spike Lee film was BlacKkKlansman. It came out 2 years ago and I really loved it, and then immediately after that my dad showed me Do the Right Thing, and I enjoyed that even more. Spike Lee has a long-running filmography and there's a lot of good things that you can find in that, and Da Five Bloods joins that. This is a very, very good movie. Very wonderful. It has a lot of great themes, especially for now. It's coming out in a very timely manner, all things considered, which, by the way, the link for the Black Lives Matter movement is down there below. If you want to know how to help, it's still there. This movie deals with a lot, like not just the effects of war, the guilt or the regrets that you may have, that you may carry with you, the hate that you learn over here that may fester inside of you if you don't let it go or talk it out with some people, if you just bottle it up inside and just put on a tough guy attitude. The effects of PTSD on a person and how it can interrupt their daily functions, how it can affect them really deeply. It also deals with race relations at that time too. They have a lot of stock footage of police brutality at that time and protests, Martin Luther King Jr.'s speeches and Malcolm X speeches as well. Once again, very timely for right now of all times too. It's important for any time, but especially right now. I think I posted this on either Letterboxd or Instagram, like I can't think of a better time for a Spike Lee film to come out than right now. This movie also kind of touches on things like how African-American soldiers are not treated the same way as white American soldiers. Like when they go back home, you know, they fought for their country, their flag, and they get everything that was promised to them. But when black people come back, you know, there's police brutality, there's an unfair system, there's segregation, and it kind of points out the hypocrisy of the flag and of America as a whole, and you can pinpoint exactly how things from the past have still kind of lasted to today, which is very sad, but one that is worth emphasizing, and it's very well done in this movie. Our core main characters are all really good together. You see them reunite and they're all fun. They bounce off each other very well. These actors they've been in like more smaller roles before, and this is like their chance to like really explode onto the screen in these lead roles, because I think originally like Sam Jackson, Don Cheadle, and Giancarlo Esposito were eyed, if I read that on Wikipedia correctly, which, you know, they're great actors. They probably would have killed it too. But I'm really happy that Spike Lee took a chance on these not as well-known actors, like compared to someone like a Sam Jackson, to be in these roles, because I can't picture anyone else playing them. There's the one guy who plays Eddie, Norm Lewis, who kind of looks like Giancarlo Esposito when he smiles. Like I noticed that, like that looks like a Giancarlo Esposito smile. But these guys really do get a really great chance to show off what they can do, and all of these guys work off each other very well, but they're also very distinct from each other. Like the character of Melvin, for example, he's the one you would kind of designate more as like the comedic relief of the group, but even though they're not afraid to get dramatic with them as a whole as well. Eddie, at first you think you kind of like know everything you need to know about them, but then they kind of drop something a little later on. You're like, ooh, that's I didn't know that was gonna happen. You know, it gets you invested with these characters beforehand when you see them all interact and buddy together. So when they go on this adventure later to find this treasure that they've left behind, and more stuff kind of starts to get revealed, and you see them interact more and maybe fall apart a bit too, it gets you really invested. So when they do drop a little secret like that about Eddie on you like that, you're like, oh, like you actually care. There's like an impact there. Clark Peters playing Otis, he did a really good job here. I think he's the one you designate as the lead, because he's like the first character you kind of get like a backstory for, and you understand why this backstory is kind of important to him, and it makes you care about him even more as the movie progresses. You already did care about them because, you know, their friendship is so strong in that first scene where they're just hanging out and talking, but when you learn stuff like this, it's like, okay, now I'm even more attached. But the main guy that everyone's going to be talking about, Paul, played by Delroy Lindo, and I'm also going to talk about him extensively because he's that fantastic in this movie. He's the one who carries a lot of the themes that I kind of mentioned before. There's a lot of them that you can find in his character. And at first he's like the tough guy, very proud of what he says. He's not afraid to be himself with his friends. He's very strong-headed. He knows exactly what he wants to do. But as the movie progresses, you learn a little bit more about him, and you understand why he's kind of the way he is now, and it makes the character a lot more tragic. And there's several times in this movie where I felt myself choking up for Delroy Lindo. His performance is really good. There are several scenes where he has his time to shine. There's a scene where he gives like a little speech in memory of their former chief, played by Chadwick Boseman, and he really does deliver a wonderful performance. If the Oscars do happen this year, he definitely needs to be considered very highly for, I guess, supporting actor. I guess you would designate him as like a supporting actor, I guess, because he's not like, I guess Otis is the lead character, but his performance is so good that it kind of overshadows everyone else anyways. You get this conflict between him and his son, played by Jonathan Majors, who's about to be in the Lovecraft Country show. He's playing Atticus. I just finished the book. I'm very excited to see him in that, but he's really good here too. The way he bounces off of Delroy Lindo, you can sense that there's some baggage there with that relationship, and there's one scene where there's an emotional, like, joyous kind of payoff immediately, but then the movie keeps going, obviously, and stuff just kind of keeps falling apart. They did a really great job handling that relationship, and, you know, these two actors are just so good with each other. It makes you feel even more sad for the Paul character when you see certain things kind of start to fall apart, the paranoia that he kind of gets as it goes on. Because that's the thing about the story too, is that when it opens up, you think, okay, this is like a character study, kind of like buddy reunion kind of thing, and they're gonna flash back and show some war footage there, but there's probably not gonna be that much suspense in the, like, present day storyline. But as the movie goes on, there's a certain point where I was like, wait, we still have like another hour and a half-ish left of the movie, and it seems like we're getting kind of close to an end. And that's when you kind of realize the movie is kind of shifting into something that's like, no, there's some suspense to be had in the present day stuff too. And it was something that I genuinely wasn't really expecting, but I was all for it because I was hooked into the plot. I was really hooked on the story, and I loved the way it was going. I could not predict that it was going there because I thought I was sold on one kind of movie, but then it became a different thing in a very seamless way, and I really like that. There's not a moment where I thought it dragged either. I've heard some people kind of mention like it's long and it's messy. It is 2.5 hours, but I was engaged throughout the entire thing. You know, there's a moment where I thought it was kind of it was showing like a pointless scene where this French girl Hetty and two people from BlacKkKlansman, Paul Walter Hauser and the guy who really hated Adam Driver, they show up, and I thought, okay, that was a random inclusion there, maybe it's just a cameo, but then they come in later, and I was like, okay, I should have just been a little more patient, because they have a role to play throughout the rest of the movie, and it's great to see them. I understand why they're here. And the action is very well done. It's very suspenseful and very well done, and especially during the flashback scenes, like, even though it's a flashback, it looks really great. Like, it looks almost like maybe documentary footage of the Vietnam War, like the way Spike Lee executes it. It looks really good. And Spike Lee playing around with the aspect ratio, that's also really impressive about this movie. It's really well edited, where they have like really seamless kind of transitions to, like, I might fuck up the numbers here, but the 2:3:5 aspect ratio where it's kind of letterboxed. And then when it goes back to the past, it goes like 4:3. It's the little awkward box. But then all of a sudden, I thought that was just going to be it. But then the screen cuts to black at one point, and it fades back in. The sun's right there, and you kind of get the sense, okay, we're about to go on like the actual journey. And the screen doesn't stop at the letterbox point. It goes even wider. I don't want to say IMAX aspect ratio. I don't think that's the right one. But it was almost like, I think it was like as far as like my TV would go, which was really cool. And it wasn't something where they were switching aspect ratios just because they could. It wasn't like a Michael Bay thing either, like in Transformers when they switch the cameras constantly and it's so annoying. It's just, I thought they served it well for the story and the mood you were supposed to feel when you saw that. There's a couple small technical things that I guess I could have gripes with, very similar to what I just said about like Becky. Like, there's certain cuts where someone goes in for a hug and they make contact, but then they cut to a different angle and they're going in again, and it's like, I wish it was just better lined up, because it seems like it's not really matching. If you're paying attention to it as much as like I was at that point, there might be certain technical things they do that might bug you, but you know, overall I had a really, really good time watching this movie. It's exactly the kind of movie that is important to watch right now. There's a lot of great themes and messages to be had here to learn. There's a lot of wonderful performances here, especially from Delroy Lindo. A lot of fascinating characters to watch and have fun with, and then be just fascinated and mesmerized by their trauma and grief that they're trying to to get over. This movie has a lot of great suspenseful sequences, a lot of good action, a lot of great utilization of its editing and the aspect ratio changes. They don't do any de-aging for the characters either. When they do the go back to the past, you just kind of see them and they look about like they do now, but it's not something that's distracting. You kind of get the sense that for the characters, they are placing themselves in the past and not just exactly remembering what they look like, because there is a moment where they show like a younger version of themselves, but throughout the other flashbacks, they look exactly how they do. It's like, that's probably a technical artistic choice made by Spike Lee that is paying off. I'm really iffy on de-aging. Like, I'm not really for it. Like, just cast younger people, I think. But I mean, if you can make it look good, then I guess you can do it. But it's just a lot of studios that do it kind of fall flat. Even The Irishman, there's a couple parts early on in the movie where you're kind of distracted, like, oh, that looks a little digital. So I was glad that they made a different choice as far as approaching this one. And the score by Terrence Blanchard, last thing I'll mention, wonderful job. He's coming back with Spike Lee after BlacKkKlansman. He did a fantastic job. The music is such a treat to listen to. I've listened to it a lot yesterday. It is so good, and I think he came up with some wonderful compositions. This is a really fantastic movie. Please check it out immediately if you have Netflix, and if you don't have Netflix, get Netflix and watch Da 5 Bloods. It's a really fucking great movie. I'm gonna give Da 5 Bloods an A. If you watch Artemis Fowl before you watch this one, like, oh, okay, I understand that that's like the hate pile on movie right now because it just dropped on Disney Plus and it got a lot of hate and everyone's like, oh, I gotta see this bullshit, but please watch Da 5 Bloods first. If you haven't watched either yet, just please watch Da 5 Bloods first, or at least watch Artemis Fowl and then immediately follow it up with Da 5 Bloods, because this is really the movie that deserves a lot of people's attention. Not another Disney cash grab that I watched last night that was so bad that I was astonished that Kenneth Branagh made it. I might make a video on it, so you'll hear more about it then, but watch Da 5 Bloods. Definitely. If you've seen the movie, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.